In this lesson, we'll learn the difference between resizing a document and resampling it. All right, great. So again, we've got our sea turtle here we're going to be working with. I've got the Lesson 5 Begin file open here. So let's talk about kind of the makeup of an image. When it comes to an image like this one here, it's made up of these little square things called pixels. Now, we can't see individual pixels at this particular magnification level, but if I were to go ahead and hold down Control and Spacebar and just zoom in really closely on his head, we still can't see those. We're going to have to zoom in very, very closely. And you can see eventually, basically we get this little grid of white lines that appears here inside of Photoshop. This is our pixel grid, and you can see as I pan around this document, zoomed in at over 1300% resolution, or rather magnification, we can see the individual pixels. For example, this one right here. You can see there are some purple pixels kind of along in here. There's some kind of teal colored, grayish teal, and then some kind of tan colored ones up here. So now this particular image is made up of thousands and thousands and thousands of pixels. So and they all work together when we're viewing this at a much lower magnification level to create the image. Now let's do this. Let's come over here to our image drop down menu, and we're going to come to image size. Now, this is going to give us some information about this image. This has actually been revised a little bit in Photoshop Creative Cloud. So we can come over here on the left and we can kind of zoom in and out and kind of look at a preview of our image. But over here on the right is where really all the magic happens. So let me just kind of break this area down for you. You can see here we have an image size. Now this image size is listed as 14.4 megabytes. So this is a fairly large image. Lots of pixel data here. You can see, as a matter of fact, down below that, we have the dimensions of this image in terms of its pixel dimensions. So if we zoom all the way out here, you can see here that this particular image is over 2,500 pixels wide and over 1,900 pixels tall. That's a lot of pixel data. So now down here below that, we have here a width and a height field. And you can see by default mine are set to inches. This is the physical size of this image. Right now, if we were to, say, print this out on a giant piece of paper, we would need a piece of paper that could print this image at 36 inches by 27 inches. I don't know of a printer, at least at my house, that can feed a piece of paper that's that large. So obviously we wouldn't be able to print this image in its current state. We need to basically shrink this image down. We need to change the physical size of this image. Now, we can do that right here inside this image size dialog, but let's go ahead and uncheck this resample option. We're going to talk about that here in just a moment, but notice what happens. With that checked, there's by default kind of a little link right here between the width and the height. And basically what that means is we can change one and it's going to change the other appropriately based on the percentage of change to whichever value we changed. Now, unchecking that option creates a bridge between the height and the width as well as the resolution. So basically when we resize this, let's say that we had maybe a 5x7 piece of photo paper that we wanted to print this on. So we'll just let's put in 5 inches for the height. And we get a value that's pretty close to 7 inches for the width. But watch what happens when I change those values to the resolution down here. Remember that was set at 72 pixels per inch. Well, by changing the height value of this image, it's taken those 72 pixels that are spread out on an inch, and it's increasing them. It's packing them tighter together inside this file. So we still have the same number of pixels working to create this image. They're just packed even tighter here. So let me show you kind of what I mean when I say 72 pixels per inch. I'm going to hold down the Alt key and hit the reset button here. And you can see here, this 72 pixels per inch resolution. I'm going to just cancel out of this dialog so I can kind of illustrate that for you. So inside your reference files, you'll have this resolution.psd file. And if I come up to image and image size on this, you'll see it's 1 inch by 1 inch at 72 pixels per inch. So, and if we zoom in on this, you'll see here that each one of these colored squares is 10 pixels by 10 pixels, 10 wide by 10 tall. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 across, so that's 70 pixels. And then we have this little sliver down here, which is 2 pixels. So this entire document is 72 pixels wide by 72 pixels tall. That's what 72 PPI means, or pixels per inch. So again, we have many more than 72 pixels inside this square inch, but the measurements are 72 by 72. Now, if we were to come over here, back to our image, and under image size, change this back to a height of, what did I say, 5 inches? Yeah, there we go. Now, resampling it does not change the resolution. So we're going to talk about that in just a moment. Let me reset this and uncheck resample. Change that back to 5. And you can see here that that 72 value automatically gets changed to 388.8. So that means in a square inch, there are 388.8 times 388.8 pixels. Many more pixels than 72 times 72. So essentially what this means is by unchecking this resample box, we can resize our image safely without losing any resolution. So if I clicked OK on this, we've now resized our image, and we can come back to our image size dialog, and you can see that those settings are retained. Now at this point, we could safely print this out on a piece of photo paper on maybe our home printer if that's what we were wanting to do. Maybe we were making some color correction to this image, and then we're wanting to print it out so we can make a photo album or something like that. Now, at this point, because we resized this image, we didn't resample it, we can also come back in here and change this width value. Let's actually change this back to 36. And you can see here that's back to our original measurements. And again, our resolution has been adjusted back to 72 pixels per inch. So I've just changed this image back to its original dimensions, its original size, and no adverse effects have been had on this image. So this is, again, resizing. Now, resampling is something totally different. Let's come back to that image size dialog. As a matter of fact, you can actually access that by holding down Control and Alt on your keyboard and hitting the I key. All right, fantastic. So coming up here again, let's go ahead and check our resample option. Now there's some options down here inside this drop-down. These are just methods of interpolation. That's kind of the method that Photoshop uses for this resampling. I would go ahead and leave this on automatic because that allows Photoshop to determine the best way to do it. So without getting overly complicated, that's going to be your best option. Now, in terms of resampling, there's two different ways that we can do this. We can either resample to take pixels out of an image, or we can resample to add pixels to an image. Taking pixels away from an image is downsampling, and adding pixels to an image is upsampling. So let me just show you kind of a really extreme case of this. I'm going to come over and change this to %. So you can see here at 100%, this is kind of the size we're working with. And I'm going to go ahead and drop this down significantly. Let's change it from 100% to 10%, just like so. Now, when I did that, look what happened to the image size up here. Remember, it was 14.4 megs. Now it's down to a very small size, 147.2 kilobytes. So this is going to be really important if you're maybe wanting to publish digital photos on the web and create a file that is easy to download. Obviously, a 14.4 megabyte image is going to take some time to download for somebody who doesn't have a high-speed internet connection. So I'm going to go ahead and reduce this to 10% of its original size. We're going to downsample it. Again, I have my resample box checked here. So let's go ahead and hit OK. You'll see that my image shrinks down significantly. But if I zoom in on this now by holding Control and Spacebar, and I begin to look at this, you'll notice that the pixels are more apparent much quicker. So it's taking far fewer pixels to create this image. Now granted, there's a lot of loss of detail here. If I were to maybe undo by going up here and hitting edit and undo, remember we had a lot of really fine detail inside this guy right here. I'll come back up here, edit and redo. A lot of that detail is obviously gone at this point. So now this is an example of downsampling. Now this works both ways though. We can actually add pixels to this image and upsample it if we ever needed to. But I want to show you again an extreme example of this. So let's come up to image and choose image size again. And let's come over here and we'll switch back over to inches. And you can see here, obviously, we have made a significant change. Looking at the physical size here, as opposed to a 36-inch wide image, we've now got about a 3.5-inch wide image, with those pixels spaced out at 72 pixels per square inch. So let's come over here and actually just select our width again. And with our resample option checked, let's switch that back to 36. So we're telling Photoshop that we want to add a lot of resolution to this file. So with that selected, let's go ahead and hit OK. And we'll have to zoom out some because that obviously made our image much larger, but just check a look at this. When we go to add that much resolution by upsampling our image, it doesn't always do a great job. You can see here, there's no way to create the detail that we lost once we got rid of it via downsampling. So even by upsampling this image back to a size similar to what we started at, we can't Photoshop can't recreate that detail that it's already gotten rid of. So this is a good example. Whenever you are maybe trying to upsample an image, maybe to get a little bit more resolution out of it, maybe you're sending it off to a commercial printer, a good sort of threshold for that is I would never try and upsample an image more than 15 to 20%. Anything beyond that, you're going to start to see some strange things happen with the image. It's not going to look quite right. It may get a little bit fuzzy. You may see some other artifacts in the image. So with that said, you now understand the difference between resizing an image and resampling an image. All right, great. With that said, let's go ahead and move on to the next lesson. In the next lesson, we're going to learn how to do something everybody needs to know how to do in Photoshop. We're going to learn how to crop an image.